Just a quick reminder, if you are trying to use the Flex inside the office, GPSs typically do not work well within buildings given all of the interference from the building construction materials. So when you do fire up your Flex, just for testing, make sure you are outside in a clear area. So currently we have the Flex mounted on top of a survey pole with two bipods. And if you are using this setup, just make sure every time you set it up that it is leveled using the bubble level. And we also have a level integrated in the Flex itself. I'll show you how to use that in a second. So to give you an overview of the Flex itself, the Flex uses an aluminum case painted in orange. So this is a very drop resistant case. I would not recommend dropping it, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. The worst case, you just get some paint chips. You can see on the back here as well is that there's some fins, and those help dissipate the heat. So we have very hot summers over here in Phoenix, and the Flex has had zero problems with overheating. You can leave it outside all day in the direct sun and you will not have any issues. Your phone or the tablet on the other end may have a couple, but you can be rest assured the Flex will perform just fine. So the whole unit is aluminum except for the top, which is actually a plastic case, and that's where the antenna is housed in. So you can't use a metal casing for the antenna because that will interfere with all the GPS signals, throwing off your results. So I popped the case off the antenna here so you can get a look at it. It's as you can see, there's a beveled edge of where the plastic casing sits on. And there's really no good reason to do this unless you're troubleshooting and having some issues. As I said before, if you drop it, your Flex should just be fine, but it sometimes can jostle the antenna out of shape a bit. So we might ask you to pop it off and screw it back in. It might get a little loose. But overall, this is the antenna that's designed for use with the receiver, and there's really very few circumstances where you would have to remove the case and do anything specifically with the antenna. If you really want to change antennas, if you saw a particular model that really caught your eye, you could go ahead and replace it. But other than that, it's usually best just to leave the case on. So when your Flex collects height measurements, it uses the phase center of the antenna, which is the center of the Flex's receiver and antenna. So that is exactly 23 centimeters from the bottom of the unit. So whenever you're entering your antenna height, whether it's in the Flex app or a different third-party app, you're going to want to enter your pole height or your backpack height or wherever you have the amount of the Flex mounted to, plus 23 centimeters. So whenever the Flex is taking calculations, it takes it directly from the center of this antenna right here, and that's what you get in your data. So your receiver has something called a helical antenna. You may have seen a lot of other survey units with flat disc antennas, and this one offers a couple advantages. It's less sensitive to movement and bumping around. So obviously mounted to a survey pole, that's not as big of a deal. But if you have it, if you're moving around, taking track logs, or if there's mounted to a backpack, you will have some issues with other antennas because just tilting it a little bit can drastically throw off measurements. These helical antennas were actually designed for uses with drones that bounce around a lot. So you can imagine you're actually on solid ground that it's more than stable enough for your measurements. So I've turned the unit around and you can see we have a couple different mounting points back here. So up top, there's a little hook if you wanted to mount it on a lanyard or something or the other. I don't know, some people want to do it. And we also have a 1/4-20 mount right here in the center. For instance, if you want to mount it on the front of your ATV or some other vehicle. Going further down, we have another mount, as well as directly above that is going to be your micro USB port. So this is not USB-C. We use micro USB because it tends to be more durable and less prone to breaking off. And this is how you're going to charge your unit. We recommend charging overnight because your Flex actually maintains about 12 to 15 hours of operational runtime. So that's a lot of charge, and so it's going to take a few hours for the Flex to charge up fully. You can just plug in back here, and this is also how you're going to export your internal data logs directly. So at the bottom of the unit, you're going to have your typical 5/8 inch mount point, but we also include an adapter in your kit that converts it to a 1/4 20 mount. So if you do have a mount that requires the 1/4 20 on the bottom, just go ahead and put that adapter in, and it should work no problem. But for most cases, the 5/8 at the bottom should be what you're using. So now to walk through the UI a bit, this is completely optional, but it also makes the use of an external tablet or phone optional. So it's nice to have that flexibility in case you're having problems with your phone or tablet, it dies out in the field. You can do everything completely through the UI up here. So clicking in the top left on this home will bring you to information about your current accuracy. So right now I am not connected to an RTK network. So I'm getting, it shows I get 7.2 inches of accuracy, and also you can get a convenient little bubble level in the bottom left, showing if your flex is balanced or not. You can see it's a little bit off, but as I said, with a helical antenna, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but you do want to get it as close as possible for your best measurements, especially when shooting RTK mode. You can see the elevation settings. So that's currently showing orthometric height. So I'm currently at 1,400 feet here in Phoenix, and as well as your fixed type as well. So you can scroll to the right here on your screen, and it'll show all of your advanced accuracy data. So right now we're getting 7.4 inches of horizontal accuracy and 13.1 inches of vertical, which is about par for the course. Typically, the vertical accuracy is going to be 1.5 times that of horizontal. So pretty expected data there. It also shows your lat and lon, as well as your dilution of precision measurements of PDOP, HDOP, and VDOP. Here it shows your fix and correction data. This is a very useful screen when we connect to RTK here in a second. RTK info again. Your frequency info, your orthometric height. It shows the geoid that we're using, as well as the ellipsoidal height. And here's an overview of all the satellites that are currently visible in the sky. So your flex receives GPS, Galileo, GLONASS, SBAS, as well as Baidu. And currently we're seeing about 17 satellites. It's dropping. It goes up and down a bit depending on the conditions. But yeah, the more satellites, the better. And back to the home screen. So now I'll fire up RTK and show you how that works. So I just fired up RTK, and you can see the immediate drop in accuracy, or increase in accuracy more like, but drop in the number. And yeah, we're already at 0.4 inches, just connected. It already has the fix. And you can see in the bottom right, you see RTCM3. That means we're using RTK correction. So in this case, we're using 0.1 navigation, which is a $80 a month service that we're partnered with. And it just makes it very convenient for connecting to RTK networks. There's no credentials. You don't have to worry about selecting the correct station. It's just you go ahead, hit 0.1 navigation to activate it. As long as you're connected to the internet, you'll receive the corrections. You already have extreme mode activated, so it's really easy to get ready and get going in the field. Scrolling over on the screen, you see a couple of things look a little bit different once we scroll over here. So right now we're using a base station that is 7 miles away. Generally, the closer the better for using RTK or a VRS core station. And so 7 miles is actually very close, so that explains why our horizontal accuracy is so good. So going back to orthometric height, you can see our geoid actually changed, and so both your geoid and your datum will change when using RTK corrections. Your datum is going to be NAD83, and your geoid is going to be geoid 18. That's just because RTK with the 2 centimeter accuracy, you're going to want to be much closer as far as precision goes, and we need the best possible datum and geoid models for your particular area. In our case, we're in North America, so geoid 18 and North American datum 83 makes the most sense. So yeah, if you want to see how the geoid is calculated, you can see the geoid is minus 96.63 right now, which means it's about 100 feet below the ellipsoidal height. So because you actually subtract the geoid from the ellipsoidal height, that adds it onto the total height, and so you get your orthometric height of 1469. So if your unit has moved a long way, or you haven't booted it on for a while, it is a good idea to let it run for 10-15 minutes outside to get all of the ephemeris and almanac data from the satellites. This is more metadata, contextual data that you get from the satellites that allows it to do the calculations that much more quicker, accurate, and more efficient. So if you're having some performance issues, and this applies to you, for instance, if you just got your unit, it's a good idea just to let it run a little bit outside. So anytime when you're doing a project, it's a good idea to hit start track logging, and you can adjust in your Flex app how often you want to collect points. If you're collecting linear data, it's a good idea to collect once every second or two, so we're like 30 to 60 points a minute. But even if you're not collecting linear data, just doing points, it's not a bad idea just to have a track log going. Maybe just collect one every 30 seconds or so, just in case some data gets lost or things get mixed up. It's nice to have a backup right here. As well as if you, each time you boot up the Flex, it will start a new project automatically, but there might be occasions where you want to have things organized into two separate folders, so you can also start a new project just manually by yourself. And here you can go to manage the logs, so you can see we have a couple loaded up. Go here to all logs, and you can export them all to a USB connected to the back of the micro USB port. So that's as simple as just plugging it in. It'll recognize the USB, and you'll see a pink light on the left in the 3-dot display here on the Flex, and that means it's ready to export. So once you export on the USB, they still live internally in the Flex, but they are available to export to the computer. We currently do not support direct connection with PCs, but you can connect just via USB. It's a very simple, straightforward process. Welcome back. We're outside here at our office near Scottsdale Airport, so please excuse the background noise from the planes and everything going by. But yeah, we're out here with the Flex set up on a pole with a bipod, so we can show you in real time how the Flex works. So welcome back, everyone. We are now inside, and I will share the screen of my iPad, and we will go through the Flex app, how it will appear on your screen. So let me start sharing this. It takes a second to connect. And we are in. So this is the screen you will see once you download the BattleFlex app, available on the Apple or Google Play Store. And you can see it's a fairly straightforward sort of format. On the left side of the screen, you have all of the main information you'd be looking for. So at the top left, you have your device nickname, along with the serial number, in my case, 14435. And with all the GPS fix information. So right now I'm connected to RTK, getting an accuracy of sub 2 centimeters, as well as my lat long appears on the screen as well. Accuracy mode. So if you're in extreme mode, if you bought your extreme Flex, you do not have to worry about this. You're always in extreme. You always have L-band and RTK and trip capability enabled. But scrolling down below that, you can go to logging to log points internally on the Flex, which can then be exported later using USB. So of course you can just log an instant point just as you would on the Flex, as shown before. You can name the point as well, do a timed point, which increases accuracy. So using this, you can think of a good metaphor for time points is a dartboard. So I'm not a very good darts player, but if I have enough shots, you can think of, let's say we're doing one shot every second. Over the course of 15, 20, 30 shots, those will all average out to be just kind of around the bullseye. So you can, when thinking of the flex, it'll take a whole bunch of GPS points around your desired target. And the more points you have, the better accuracy you'll have because you'll be able to average those directly in your position of choice. So the more time, the better point. A good recommendation we have for kind of starting out is 15 seconds, but this depends a lot on your conditions and your desired accuracy. And so this is the best setting to kind of play around with. But a good starting point is 15 seconds, although you can certainly take an instant point if your accuracy in that day is high enough for your project. So kind of along those lines, we also have the option of raw point logging. And this takes the raw Rhinex file directly from the GPS and saves that file. And you can convert this later using the Opus tool on NOAA's website to get an extremely accurate point. But the downside of this is that you have to record this point for a minimum of 15 minutes. So you can see if I hit log raw point here, click OK, it's going to say I have 15 and a half minutes remaining because you have to get a ton of data for this point to be accurate as possible. Well, but when you do get this point you can use this to correct all your other points using post-processing after the fact. So, but we'll cancel this for now and go through into track logging. So this is a good backup option. If for whatever reason your point didn't log, or if some data got lost for whatever reason, having this track logging running in the background is a good idea because you can kind of just go back and get that point because it automatically logs. You can set how often these points will collect. It'd be anywhere from 1 every minute to 1 every second. So just having it as a backup, it might be a good idea to collect one every 15 to 30 seconds, just in case something goes wrong or it doesn't collect. You can go to look at your track log to see not only where you've been, but as well as you grab a point that may have been misplaced. And then you can also have the option of starting a project. Every time you boot up your Flex, a new project will be started. But let's say if you want to do multiple projects in the same time out on the field, you can start a new one as well as name it here, and it'll give you all the information, how many points, tracks, and raw logs are started in there. So for instance, if I go ahead and log a point, go down to logging settings here, we can also see that you have a bunch of other extra options for more customizability when you are performing all of these different options. So for naming your points, you can change the prefix depending on what you're shooting. Time points, again, you can go from 15, 30 all the way up to a minute. Maybe just start with 15 just for time's sake. But if you're going to be at a point for 30 seconds anyway, entering attributes, you might as well increase that to 30 seconds or a minute, depending on how long you typically are at each data collection point. You can select your minimum horizontal accuracy. Obviously, in RTK mode, we're going to be much less than 50 centimeters. So you can either do 5 or 2, and that will just prevent you from accidentally shooting a point that doesn't have your required accuracy limits. So do something with that. Your algorithm right here, you can do the weighted average, or you can do the best point. We recommend just keeping the default for weighted average, but if you wanted to just have your best point with the least amount of accuracy variation, you can do that as well. But the weighted average is typically going to be your best bet. Track logging, you can, again, similar to the point, you can change the prefix, the track logging rate. So depending on what you're doing, if you want it just as a backup file, probably 12 per minute is a good place to start. Just because you don't want to have a massive file containing a whole bunch of points that you just don't need. You can also collect NMEA data as well if you want that metadata, as well as the MEMS as well. So you can just select those radio buttons if you want to enable that. Raw point, again, the same sort of thing. The minimum is going to be 15 all the way up to 24 hours, which is a little ridiculous, but typically you're going to be shooting between 15 and 2 hours. You started to get diminishing returns after 2 hours. But if you do 30 minutes, it can be significantly better than 15, shooting this raw log that can be post-processed after the fact to correct all your points. And as well as you can change your Rhinex configuration for that raw point log. All right, so going back, that's all of your logging settings there. So up over here, you can change your Flex app settings. So you can go from light mode to dark mode. You can see the difference here. Personally, I like using dark mode, but either way works. You prevent split screen for whatever reason you don't want your app splitting in half. Personally, I don't like having to switch between multiple screens using field maps as well as our Flex. So I kind of like having them both up at the same time. It's more intuitive and it gets less confusing that way. You can change all your display units, navigation. You can have stored locations in case you have to navigate to specific pre-existing points. You can load those up via text file. Your Ntrip settings. So right here. So depending on how you're connecting to Ntrip, you can enter your credentials here to connect to your mount point. And you hit this radio button right here to connect to the server. Right now we're inside right now, so everything's just a simulation. So we're not actually connecting to a literal Ntrip station right now. But if you did want to do that, you could also select the button here over on the left that says Ntrip on the bottom left, just put 0.1 navigation. And if you do want to use 0.1 navigation, it's a very nice service that makes connecting to RTK via Ntrip just so much more convenient. Right now, you have a free trial free with your unit, so it's worth giving it a shot. It will automatically find your nearest station. The closer the station is, the better. Typically less than 30 miles is what you're looking for because you want to be looking at the same sky as the station you're receiving corrections from. And then it's just simple as just hitting this radio button and you will connect to 0.1 navigation and receive your RTK fixes. So it's definitely worth looking into. It's $80 a month, but just for convenience sake, for a lot of people, it makes a lot of sense. They have coverage all across the United States, and while you're connected to the internet, you should be able to find a base station using them. So if using your own base station doesn't work out for whatever reason, that's always a good alternative. So going back to the settings, let's go up over here. Flex tokens. So if you're in extreme mode, you don't have to worry about this, but there's a couple different ways to load up tokens if you do want to activate extreme mode. You can buy more tokens from the store. You can scan a QR code, type in a code that you got from an email. A couple of easy ways to do that. But again, if you bought the extreme bundle, you don't have to worry about that. It's always active. All right, so hopping back, let's check out the settings itself. You change the nickname. That's the name of the device that shows up in the top left. You can all the different display settings. You can have the backlight. It shows whether the backlight shows up or not. Saves a little bit of battery if you have momentary on, but you can also toggle it on and off if you want to see that screen all the time. Again, everything that you see on the Flex's UI is duplicated on the app, so I recommend just keeping that on for battery life's sake. So going to antenna setting, this is a very important. You do set your antenna setting. So your antenna phase center is 23 centimeters from the bottom of the unit. So however tall your pole is or your mounting device, you are just adding 23 centimeters. So for this example, we typically mount it on a 2-meter pole. So it's 2 meters plus a 23 and you're good to go. As far as the integrated antenna goes, I mean, you're probably going to be using the antenna that comes with the unit 99% of the time. But if you do happen to use something else, uncheck that button. But that doesn't apply to most people. So yeah, you can also select your GEOI corrections for both satellite and RTK based corrections. Uh, Typically, just leave the default for those unless in your specific area you're using a different GEOI model. You can also select just ellipsoidal height if you're working in that. Going to logging settings. Again, we covered all of this, so just make sure your logging settings are configured correctly. And then if we also have laser rangefinder coming out soon, so definitely feel free to talk with us if that's something you're interested in. It's a brand new feature we have coming out. We're really excited about it. All right, so just going through the actual screens themselves, you can see you get a whole bunch of data. So right now we're connected to RTK. Our accuracy is 1.7 centimeters. You can see our distance and as well as our datum. Remember to keep in mind that using RTK corrections, it does use a different datum than your typical GPS unit using satellite-based augmentation systems. So instead of being WGS 84, we are working in NAD 83. The 2011 edition in this case. So just make sure you keep your datum in mind when you are using RTK based corrections. Very important. It will throw your data off by approximately a meter in both X and Y, both lat and long. So so hopping back, you have your power, your battery. You could have your nickname, just all the data about your unit, just to make sure everything looks all right. Just give it a quick litmus test, make sure everything's fine. And scrolling down here, we went through the logging settings. You can view how the sky looks with the satellites. You've received data from all 4 constellations that are over North America: GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Baidu. And you could get an example, get a sneak peek at kind of what your GPS receiver is seeing in the sky. So the more satellites that your GPS receiver sees, the better it performs, the better data you get. And that about covers the app. Let me know if you have any questions.